What if the way we talk about, like, saving the rainforest is secretly connected to the gender wage gap?
I know, it sounds like a massive stretch at first.
Right, because normally, I mean, when you think about environmentalism, you picture melting ice caps or endangered species, maybe carbon emissions.
Exactly. And then feminism is, a totally different box. You think reproductive rights, political representation, workplace discrimination.
Yeah, we put them in these two completely separate boxes. But what if the boundary between those two boxes is just an illusion?
Well, that is exactly what we are looking at today.
Yeah, today in this deep dive, we're unpacking a really mind-bending philosophical argument, this idea that nature is, at its core, a feminist issue.
This is a huge concept.
It is. We're going to explore the logic of domination, look at how the everyday words you speak might be secretly reinforcing systemic oppression, and we'll examine some incredible real-world events from the global south. Okay, let's unpack this.
And before we dive into the deep end, I do want to set some ground rules. These philosophers make some incredibly sharp, really structural critiques of Western development, of capitalism, and patriarchal society.
Yeah, they do not hold back.
Not at all. But our mission today is not to tell you if their political conclusions are right or wrong. We aren't taking sides.
Right, absolutely.
We are just here to impartially report on these frameworks. We want to map out the underlying philosophy so you can, examine the machinery for yourself, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum.
Yeah, we're basically acting as your guides through some highly provocative territory. So let's start with that core premise. It's kind of the informal slogan for this entire movement. Nature is a feminist issue.
Which is a bold statement.
Very bold. I mean, if you tell someone on the street that a dying coral reef is a feminist issue, they're probably going to look at you like you have two heads. Why link these seemingly unrelated spheres?
Well, the foundation of this philosophy argues that you literally cannot fully understand environmental degradation without understanding the domination of nature.
Okay.
And you can't understand the domination of nature without seeing how it mirrors the oppression of women. They argue the underlying mechanics driving both are identical.
Wow. But this isn't just like an abstract thought experiment being debated in university lounges.
No, not at all. It is grounded in hard global demographics. If you look at researchers like Greta Gard and Laurie Gruen, they point out that when an environment collapses, the devastation does not hit equally.
Yeah, it overwhelmingly hits women. We are talking specifically about poor, rural women in less developed nations who serve as the heads of their households.
Exactly. When deforestation happens, or say a local water source is contaminated by industrial runoff, the immediate existential burden falls directly on them.
Because they're the ones managing the daily survival. I mean, think about the mechanics of a subsistence economy.
Right. If a multinational corporation clear-cuts a forest to export the timber, the women who relied on that specific forest for foraging food or collecting firewood, they lose their entire lifeline.
Yeah, just gone overnight.
Poof, gone. And suddenly they might have to walk 5 extra miles a day just to find fuel to boil water.
Which is time stolen from education or community building or earning an alternative income. The environmental destruction directly accelerates their poverty.
It's a devastating cycle.
But wait, so is this just a geographic coincidence, like that women happen to be disproportionately located in areas with fragile ecosystems and bad pollution laws? Or is there a deeper, actual philosophical link connecting the treatment of women and the treatment of nature?
It is not a coincidence. They argue it's deeply systemic. It's rooted in the very foundations of how we process reality.
Okay.
Because there's always more to learn when you look at the bedrock of human thought. And here, these thinkers point directly to canonical Western philosophy.
Like ancient Greece kind of stuff.
Exactly. The intellectual operating system that built the modern Western world. According to this critique, early Western philosophy created what is called an ontological divide.
An ontological divide. Okay, to put that in everyday terms for you listening, an ontological divide means a hard boundary in the very nature of existence.
Right.
It's this assumption that humans are fundamentally separate from and superior to the natural world. Instead of seeing ourselves as, one thread in a massive ecological web, we built this worldview where human culture is inside the fortress.
And mindless, wild nature is outside the gates, just waiting to be tamed.
Yeah. So what happens once you build that fortress?
Well, once you establish that hard boundary, you have to build a structure to organize it. This is what the philosophers call an oppressive conceptual framework.
Let's break that down.
A conceptual framework is just the lens through which you view the world, your basic beliefs and values. But it becomes an oppressive framework when it functions specifically to maintain and justify institutions of domination. And this framework operates on a few specific gears. The first gear is up-down value hierarchical thinking.
Which we do all the time.
Oh, constantly. We love putting things on a ladder. One concept is placed up and another is placed down, and whatever is up is automatically assigned higher moral or practical value.
And that naturally feeds into the second gear, which is oppositional value dualisms.
Right.
Western philosophy thrives on mutually exclusive pairs, mind versus body, reason versus emotion, and most importantly for us today, culture versus nature and male versus female.
So historically, this framework places male, reason, and culture in the up position on the ladder.
Exactly. And female, emotion, and nature are relegated to the down position.
Okay, so we have this ladder and we've assigned the positions, but simply noticing a difference between two things doesn't automatically equal oppression.
No, it doesn't.
It's like a rigged game where the rules are written by the ups to ensure the downs stay down, and then the ups point to the rules to prove it's fair. So what does this all mean? How does this ladder actually turn into active exploitation?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it all hinges on the engine of the entire system, the logic of domination.
The logic of domination.
Yes, this is strictly defined as the moral premise that superiority justifies subordination.
Okay, wait, say that one more time.
Superiority justifies subordination. It's this internalized belief that because the up possesses some specific characteristic like rationality or abstract thought, it is morally justified for the up to conquer, control, or exploit the down.
So it isn't just a categorization tool, it is literally a permission slip.
Exactly. It's a permission slip. And to illustrate how crucial that permission slip is, think about the relationship between a parent and a child.
Okay.
A responsible parent exercises immense power over a toddler. They dictate when the child sleeps, what they eat, if they can cross the street. That is undeniably an up-down dynamic. The parent has authority.
Right, but we don't consider a healthy parent-child relationship to be oppressive.
Because the parent isn't exploiting the toddler for personal gain, the power is used for care, not extraction.
Okay, I see where you're going.
The relationship only becomes oppressive if the logic of domination is applied. If the parent views the child as a fundamentally inferior object whose subordination exists merely to serve the superior adult.
Wow. So the logic of domination is what twists the simple difference in capacity into an excuse for tyranny.
Exactly. And eco-feminist philosophers argue that this exact same logic, the idea that the rational, cultured male sphere is inherently entitled to extract value from the emotional, wild female sphere, is the root cause of both environmental destruction and gender inequality.
But, I mean, how does an abstract ancient Greek philosophy survive into the modern day? People don't walk around the grocery store consciously thinking, I'm going to apply oppositional value dualisms today.
No, they definitely don't. But the mechanism keeping this alive is hidden in plain sight. It is baked into our everyday vocabulary.
Language.
Yes. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein proposed that the language we use actively mirrors our conceptual framework. Words are not neutral. They are the architecture of our worldview.
And we can see this architecture so clearly in how the English language animalizes women to reinforce an inferior status.
It's incredibly pervasive once you notice it.
It really is. Think about the specific insults used almost exclusively against women. They're called cows, sows, old bats, or bird brains. We say a group of women cackles, or we joke that a wife henpecks her husband.
Right.
The language literally reduces them to livestock or nuisance animals.
And then notice what happens when we look at the environment. The language violently feminizes nature.
Yeah, it's never just a gender-neutral ecosystem.
No, it is Mother Nature. And look at the verbs we attach to Mother Nature in our cultural lexicon. We talk about how she must be conquered, mastered, or tamed.
We say her secrets are penetrated by science.
Exactly. We describe cutting down ancient forests as felling virgin timber. We look at land that cannot produce profitable crops and call it barren.
Just like a woman unable to conceive, it is completely normalized.
It is. And the philosopher Carol Adams argues that this cross-pollination of language is incredibly dangerous. By feminizing nature, we mask the brutality of environmental exploitation. It just becomes the natural mastery of the masculine over the feminine.
And by animalizing women, we justify subordinating them because our framework already dictates that animals are down on the ladder.
Exactly.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate for a second. We use animal terms for men too, right? Like we call guys wolves or sharks or jackasses. Is that really the same thing? Because here's where it gets really interesting.
It's a great question, and it's a very common counterargument.
Hmm.
But you have to look at the gravity of the words within a patriarchal context.
Meaning a society that systemically privileges men.
Right. In its laws, its institutions, its norms. When a man is called a wolf or a shark, those terms usually imply predatory behavior or aggression or cutthroat business tactics.
Even some complimentary ones like eagle-eyed or brave as a lion.
Exactly. Even when they are used negatively, they are terms of power and danger. They do not strip the man of his societal agency.
Right. Nobody calls a man a shark to imply he should be put in a pen and milked.
Precisely. But when a woman is called a cow, a sow, or a bitch, the terms are specifically designed to strip away her humanity. They reduce her status to that of domesticated property or a breeding animal.
So the animal terms applied to men celebrate dominance, but the animal terms applied to women enforce submission.
Yes, they simply do not carry the same systemic weight of subjugation.
That makes total sense. And when you build a vocabulary that reduces both nature and women to resources waiting to be mastered, it's not just a linguistic exercise. It translates into physical violence against both.
It really does.
And you can see that collision perfectly in real-world history. Which brings us to this breathtaking example from 1974 in northern India, the Chipko movement.
Oh, this is such a profound historical moment.
Yeah.
It exposes the clash of what philosophers call epistemology.
Epistemology, that's the study of knowledge, right?
Yes, exactly. It asks, how do we know what we know? And more importantly, who gets to decide who qualifies as a legitimate knower in society?
Well, let's set the scene for 1974. Contractors arrived in these local forests in northern India with government permits to begin commercial clear-cutting.
Right.
And Chipko in Hindi translates roughly to embrace or hug. So 27 rural women walked into the forest and literally hugged the indigenous trees. They placed their physical bodies between the bark and the loggers' axes.
It's incredible bravery.
They told the loggers that to cut the trees, they would have to cut them first. And through this relentless, nonviolent resistance, those women successfully saved 12,000 square kilometers of sensitive watershed.
It is a massive triumph of grassroots activism. But philosophically, it reveals this huge fracture between two completely different systems of knowledge.
Yeah, paint that picture for us.
So you have the Western-trained foresters arriving with chainsaws and official permits,
Yeah.
and you have the local women standing in front of the trees.
Right. And those local women possessed what researchers call indigenous technical knowledge, or ITK.
Exactly. And this isn't knowledge you learn in a university lecture hall. It is forged from daily lived experience.
Yeah, those women knew exactly which plants provided medicine, which branches could be harvested for fuel without killing the tree, where to gather fodder for their animals. I mean, the forest was an intricate living grocery store, a pharmacy, and a utility provider.
It kept their community alive without needing a cash economy.
But the orthodox Western foresters, trained in that culture versus nature dualism, literally did not perceive those uses.
They couldn't see it. Their conceptual framework was built entirely around commercial fiber production. They looked at this diverse, ancient ecosystem and saw only one thin-board feet of exportable timber.
They suffered from a culturally induced blindness.
That's a perfect way to put it.
There is this stunning piece of data from Sierra Leone that perfectly illustrates this blindness. Researchers went into a community and asked the locals about the surrounding tree species.
Oh, I love this example.
It's wild. The local men, who were typically engaged in the cash economy and outside labor, could name on average 8 different uses for the local trees. But the local women, they could name 32.
32.
Yeah. I mean, imagine an outside corporate consultant coming into your kitchen, taking one look around and throwing away all your pots, pans, and groceries because they aren't exportable goods.
Right, completely ignoring the fact that you need them to survive today.
Exactly. Just because your kitchen doesn't generate corporate profit.
What's fascinating here is how the Chipko movement absolutely shatters the canonical Western idea of the impartial, detached, gender-neutral knower.
Because Western philosophy assumes the objective outsider is the ultimate expert, right?
Yes, the person supposedly stripped of emotion and local bias. But in the forests of northern India, the supposedly objective experts were about to completely destroy the very ecosystem that sustained human life.
The true experts were the rural women.
Exactly. Their indigenous technical knowledge was vastly superior for actual survival. It proves that theory has to fit the facts of lived daily experience. You can't force lived experience to submit to abstract theory.
Right. And the philosopher Vandana Shiva takes this observation and outlines a concept she calls maldevelopment.
Yes, maldevelopment.
She points out that when colonizers entered regions across Asia and Africa, they didn't just extract resources, they actively dismantled existing sustainable systems. They destroyed the multi-species indigenous forests that were managed by women and sustained local communities.
And we really have to look closely at the mechanism of what they replaced those forests with.
Monoculture cash crops.
Exactly. Massive, uniform plantations of eucalyptus or teak wood. These plantations were designed for one purpose only, to be harvested and sold on the global market.
And furthermore, the management of these new cash crop forests was handed almost exclusively to local men.
Integrating them into a wage labor system.
Right. This is how the switch from a subsistence forest to a cash crop forest literally transfers economic power from women to men. Because, think about it, before the colonizers arrived, a woman could walk into the diverse forest and gather everything she needed to feed and care for her family for free.
Her knowledge gave her immense economic value within the community.
But once that forest is replaced by a eucalyptus plantation, the free resources are just gone. Suddenly, the family needs cash to buy food and medicine, but only the men are given the jobs to cut the eucalyptus.
According to Shiva, this maldevelopment artificially generated material poverty where none had existed before. It led directly to the feminization of poverty.
Wow.
It stripped women of their independent means of survival, it marginalized their indigenous knowledge, and it forced them into dependence within a male-controlled, cash-based hierarchy.
It is the ultimate devastating application of the logic of domination. The colonizers viewed their capitalist, export-driven framework as the up on the ladder, and the indigenous subsistence framework was the down.
And that logic provided the moral permission slip to wipe out the ecosystem and shatter the women's economic standing in one swift motion.
It's all connected.
It really brings the entire philosophy into sharp focus. Ecofeminist thinkers argue that you simply cannot slap a bandage on environmental degradation without simultaneously addressing gender inequality.
Because the two are intertwined at the root, the chainsaw cutting the tree and the system disenfranchising the woman are powered by the exact same motor.
Exactly.
Well, we have covered incredible ground today. We started by exploring the seemingly strange premise that nature is a feminist issue, only to uncover the hidden logic of domination, that dangerous belief that superiority naturally justifies subordination.
Right.
We analyzed how our everyday English language subtly weaponizes this logic by animalizing women and feminizing nature to make exploitation feel totally natural.
And we travel to the global south to witness how the lived experiences of women, like the heroes of the Chipko movement, actively challenge Western concepts of knowledge and development. It's a lot to take in, but navigating our modern world requires looking beneath the surface. We are bombarded with new environmental policies, economic development plans, and political rhetoric every single day.
It's information overload.
It is.
Yeah.
But understanding these philosophical interconnections gives you a radically richer, more accurate picture of global challenges. You cannot dismantle a system of exploitation if you don't recognize the conceptual framework that engineered it in the first place. So as you reflect on this deep dive, I ask you, what stands out to you?
Yeah, it provides a completely new lens to view the news, environmental policies, and even the words you choose daily. It makes the invisible architecture of our society visible. And that brings me to a final thought for you to take with you into your day. We have spent all this time dissecting a language and an economic system built on a logic of domination. But what if we started from scratch? What would a completely new language look like? One built entirely from the ground up on a logic of partnership or a logic of care? If superiority no longer justified subordination, how differently would you speak to and about the world tomorrow morning?